Welcome to the SAR United States section webinar. Thank you for attending. We have close to 50 people from all regions of the country here represented. My name is Adam Braver and I'm the steering committee chair of the US section. Today I'm joined by Executive Director Rob Quinn and several SAR staff who will be sharing information with you shortly. Additionally, I'll note that we also have SAR's Deputy Director Sarah Wilcox on this call, and SAR's membership program assistant, Maddie Everett, who generously is here to help with the technology and to relay your questions to staff during the recorded session. Which brings up some general housekeeping points before we get started. As you're probably all familiar with by now, please go ahead and make sure your microphones are muted. We are recording the session, which may be shared as a resource to other SAR network members in the US at a later date. Recording will stop upon conclusion of the programmatic updates. The final open-ended discussion and question session during the last 20 minutes of the webinar will not be recorded. We have reserved a few minutes in the agenda for questions to SAR staff at the end of their presentations on their program areas. These questions should be submitted via the Q&A, it should be submitted via the Q&A window near the bottom of your screen. Please note the questions submitted via Q&A may be viewed by others. We have reserved more time for substantive questions and discussion after the presentations, so there will be plenty of time for follow-up. As some of you may know, there are numerous country and regional sections throughout the SAR Global Network, and we, the United States, are among the newest, which now allows us to bring our voice, interests, and perspectives to SAR's International Advisory Council, of which I serve as a representative via this role. While much of our section's mission continues to be developed, a major goal is to increase communication, connection, collaboration, and camaraderie between US institutions and partners as we engage in our SAR-related work, be it through hosting or student advocacy seminars and monitoring clinics, or values and learning programs surrounding academic freedom, or maybe all of the above. To that end, the steering committee currently is split into 3 subcommittees that correspond with SAR program areas: protection, advocacy, and research and learning. And I welcome anyone on this call to join one of those subcommittees, as we really want and need more variety of voices and perspectives. Please feel free to email me if interested. On the first day of the 2016 Global Congress in Montreal, the International Advisory Committee agreed to add in a US section. And on day 2, we were huddled in the hallways of McGill, already planning. We held a provisional section meeting at the 2018 Congress in Berlin, but all eyes were on the 2020 Congress in Baltimore to be our first true section meeting, and you know the next part of that story. But I am so delighted that we can be here today and that we can continue onward with our commitment to protecting the higher education space, and that we can be part of this conversation that asks how we can move forward at this vulnerable moment resulting from COVID-19, one in which serious threats still face higher education, be it the ongoing attacks on scholars and institutions by authoritarians and bad state actors, to the economic crises that are facing most of our campuses. With that in mind, I'm eager to learn more about how to work with the challenges, opportunities, and realities that impact SAR's work, or our work, and particularly given this gathering in the US context. So let's get started by welcoming Robert Quinn, SAR's Executive Director, who will share information about the SAR network in the age and time of COVID-19.
Thank you, Adam, and thank everybody for joining us. It's really good to be in touch. And my thanks to Chelsea and to Maddie and to Joyce for putting this call together. So I just wanted to say a few minutes at the beginning, mostly thanks to all that you're doing at your institutions, at your associations, and to the prospective members that I think are also on this call. I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to meet in person in Baltimore, as we really would have liked to, but of course we look forward to the day when we can. If I could ask whoever's in charge of the slides, if you could just pop up the two slides we agreed to. But what I would have shared with us in Baltimore was a brief report on SAR's strategic plan and where we are on things. And then I'm sure we would have wanted to talk about where things go with the virus. So I don't expect you to read this all now, but and I'm not going to read it all myself. But so you know, we do have a strategic plan. It's our second written 5-year strategic plan in the history of our organization. And it has three primary operational goals behind it. First and foremost, in the importance to the board, to the staff, and I assume to all of us, is to maintain the primacy of our services for protection, to assist threatened scholars, threatened colleagues, including our current exploration of practitioners at risk, and the other populations that we work with. So that's goal number one in the strategic plan, to increase both the quality of the service and the quantity. So quantity, many of you probably know, we have a historic, for us, record level of cases in our caseload at the moment. So we want to try to help more scholars, but we also know we want to continually improve the services we're providing to you at institutions, as well as to the scholars, to increase the likelihood of success in their placements and help them get back on their feet professionally. I wanted to mention that specifically under the strategic plan goals, one of the elements of that first most important goal is to strengthen the SAR USA section. So I'm delighted to be on this call to hear from all of you ideas about how we can do that and put more time and resources into strengthening activities across the US. The second goal, just so you're aware of them, is to grow and diversify our program funding to ensure the long-term sustainability of our network. We're doing better than we've ever been done in the past, but of course there's still a great deal of vulnerabilities. I say better than ever because when SAR started out, we really had almost no funds and we were 100% dependent on 100% restricted grants. So we had very, very little wiggle room to innovate or to adapt to anything might come along. I'm pleased that we've been able to do some diversification. We've gotten more successful at finding supporters that would give us multi-year grants as opposed to year-to-year grants, but still we are heavily dependent on what is known as soft money. And so a big part of my job for the remainder of this strategic plan and going forward is to try to diversify our funding base. And then third is to reorganize and fill gaps within the SAR structure, within the office itself, so that we can continue to provide the level of service that we want to all of you and to the scholars we work with. And there's a little bit of a list there of what that includes, but I'm pleased to say we've already halfway through the plan made good success. As Adam said, Sarah is on the call as our deputy director, which is really essential. Chris Conlon is our full-time administrator. It was only this fall that we've had an administrator as a full-time position. So that will free up my time to be more available to the sections and to our sponsors and partners to try to help us get at goals 1 and 2. And then some other positions. But there are a few positions that are open at the moment. They're going to be a little trickier to fill during the current gap, and perhaps that'll come up as we talk about ways we can be more of service. But we do know that we want to be adding people so that we can continue to provide both the current services and the new services that we would all like to see. So that's the strategic plan in a nutshell. And then if I could just give you sort of the top level on where we are with COVID, and then it'll turn it over to the directors for the different areas. And then I really look forward to the discussion. So overall, the top level is SARS okay. We already, as you know, do a lot of work that is very remote and distant. So half to 2/3 of our work was already operating in the remote environment. So in that sense, our office is very well set up to be able to adapt to this. Of course, the challenge is that a lot of that work did involve going to see people and to bring people together and to help people move from one place to another. So Rose will touch on that, I'm sure, but I know that we are, thanks to the generosity and support of institutions and representatives at those institutions, still able to help scholars, particularly those who are already in one place. And we're adapting in other ways to try to assist those who won't be able to travel for a while. Meanwhile, we're just trying to mitigate harms for scholars and others as we can. I would flag that as it gets more difficult at this moment, I think we also know that we will see an affirmative increase in attacks on scholars because of the virus situation. And that includes scholars who work on virus-related information, trying to put that information out to the public. It will include scholars who try to comment on gaps or problems with responses and authorities cracking down on that. And it will also include crackdowns on scholars that really aren't directly related, but because authorities use the situation of the virus to try to crack down on expression generally. So we know as we're trying to mitigate the situation, we also know that we'll be looking at an increase in the need for our services. And then finally, I would just flag that, and Adam already mentioned it, I see this also as an opportunity for the network. Obviously, we wish none of it happened, and we know both personally and institutionally, there are going to be great challenges for members of our community going forward. But at the same time, the reality of our network was that it is so spread out that at any given time, any one Congress we have, any one workshop we have, it's a relatively small number of the individuals at a member institution that have been able to directly participate in those activities. So I, myself, and most of the team were looking at how can we use this opportunity to deepen our engagement with all of you, with the people you're engaged with, and in that sense, make your work more fruitful, easier if we can, help all of us to reach more people. And I think that's the big opportunity in this, to see some degree, ironically, of being forced to be physically separate. Maybe we can find new ways to connect with larger groups. So I'll pause there. As I said, I'm delighted to be here to listen in, and then look forward to the questions and discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. We're going to move on to hear from the different directors of the program areas. And we're going to start with Rose Anderson, who will talk about protection, followed by Claire Robinson talking about the advocacy section. Again, there'll be a few minutes at the end of both of their combined presentation to ask some questions, keeping in mind that it's a limited amount of time and that we, of course, will have more time at the end of the session for a more open discussion. So welcome, Rose and Claire.
Thank you, Adam. First, it's a real pleasure to join you here today and to see so many familiar names joining us. In terms of the activities and priorities for the protection team over the last few months, when news of the travel restrictions and border closings first started to come in March, our team started to reach out to scholars who are in placements or those that had travel coming soon to explore options and offer support. And our general approach to hosting in this moment, and given the many uncertainties surrounding the issuance of visas and travel, is to encourage host institutions where possible to offer extensions to scholars who are already being hosted, or to host scholars who are already in their same country at present, to avoid challenges around travel while there are so many questions that remain. I'm really pleased and incredibly heartened, and I know the entire team at SAR is, to see how many hosts over these past few weeks have offered extensions to SAR scholars. I believe the count is 10 at present, with a few more in the works, primarily in Canada, Norway, and Sweden, and also one in the United States. And these have all been extensions in relation to COVID, and just realizing that scholars face a mounting uncertainty about where they can travel when and what a job search will look like for them this next academic year. And you know, we're especially grateful for this, knowing that many universities are grappling with questions, and very serious ones, about their budgets right now and in the coming year. So in light of that, and while I want to just note that our focus remains on supporting and promoting traditional hosting in the way that we've done it for 20 years, we also see and want to invite universities and other institutions to consider offering remote fellowships to scholars. So these may be paid or unpaid, and essentially consist of offering a scholar a university email address, which allows them to access library and database resources of the host campus, and also allows them an affiliation under which to publish, and provides a unique form of connection with a university, even if they cannot be there at present. So we first started these remote fellowships in relation to scholars in Turkey who for a number of years have been unable to travel due to passport cancellation, and also unable to work in Turkey due to the pressures they face. And so there's this group and population of academics in Turkey who have essentially been cut off from academia. So we first started to have universities explore this for that population. And I'm pleased to say that Roger Williams has offered 4 remote fellowships to scholars, and they have proven to be an incredible form of support for these scholars, and been a really tangible benefit in this time. And beyond Turkey, in this moment, remote fellowships also provide a very unique way to support scholars when there are these questions around travel, and for some universities, funding. So I just want to share, for anyone interested in learning more about this, please reach out. We're happy to share more of the specifics with you, and also discuss possible candidates. And also, I'm assuming Adam would be willing, we can connect you with universities who have done this on campus in case you have questions that would be helpful to hear from a peer. I want to highlight another opportunity for engagement, which is the Practitioners at Risk pilot project. So several on this call are already involved in this project, which is essentially an initiative to host human rights defenders, democracy activists, and others on campus for short-term visits. And for this initiative, SAR has a modest amount of matched funding for short-term fellowships. We invite anyone interested in this idea to join the Practitioners at Risk affinity group. Members can put forward candidates for consideration, be involved in conversations around events in human rights and for human rights defenders, and also be engaged in discussions around the pilot as it develops. And I just want to underline here, you don't have to be ready to host a practitioner at risk in order to join the affinity group. So don't let that stop you. I also want to share, just recognizing we have a few association representatives joining us today. We very much welcome associations who have or already are considering offering free memberships to SAR scholars. We have several associations who have done this at present, and it's been a really tangible form of support for scholars in terms of being aware of open calls within their disciplines, access to journals, and other really valuable forms of networking that help while scholars are in placements and also as they plan for their next steps. A final point that I'll highlight, and this is particularly relevant for any current hosts, is that in the past several weeks, we've offered our emergency fund for items such as laptops for scholars who needed them to work remotely, or who had very complex immigration challenges and needed legal counsel. And I highlight this to remind all of the hosts that SAR maintains a modest emergency fund for just these kinds of urgent expenses. And so if you are aware of any particular needs, please feel free to reach out so we're aware and we can help address that. I will pause there, and I just want to invite anyone who is interested in exploring hosting, remote fellowships, or any other ways to support SAR scholars to get in touch with us. We're happy to brainstorm ideas and match with candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. And hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Claire, and I direct SAR's advocacy efforts. I'm delighted to share opportunities to participate in our advocacy work during these times. We divide our advocacy efforts into 4 main areas. The Academic Freedom Monitoring Project, which monitors and reports on attacks on higher education worldwide. Case advocacy through our Scholars in Prison project. Hands-on research and advocacy experience for students through our student advocacy seminars, and broader legal advocacy through our legal clinics and regional partnerships. Each program has a global mandate. So as Rob mentioned, this has necessitated that much of the work has a significant online component. So now is really an excellent time to get involved. So first, our Academic Freedom Monitoring Project. This is the foundation of Scholars at Risk's advocacy work. It is our effort to monitor and report on attacks on higher education, including violence, killings, imprisonments, prosecution, loss of position, travel restriction, and other attacks. It's supported by volunteer researchers around the world. SAR scholars who we've assisted, faculty in human rights programs and other academic disciplines, and students who engage through our legal clinic program, which I'll discuss in a moment. Monitors are trained remotely in SAR's research methodology and writing style, and are provided with support from SAR as they track media and other reports on attacks on higher education. We, of course, welcome new faculty, student, and scholar monitors at all times, especially those with country expertise. And we'd welcome discussing with any regionally focused academic associations any opportunities to issue a call out to your membership for participation in the project. So each fall, SAR issues Free to Think, which is a report summarizing the year's thematic and regional trends in attacks on academic freedom drawn from our monitoring project data. As an aside, this year's report will include an examination of attacks on higher education related to COVID-19. In terms of involvement, many of our members use the report release as an opportunity to raise awareness about the issues in the report, but also about your membership in Scholars at Risk through an event, a campus news piece, departmental newsletters, press release, all of which can still be done online. This year, we plan to host an online conference to mark the report's release in late November, and I hope you'll join us. The second area of work I wanted to highlight is our case advocacy on behalf of wrongfully imprisoned scholars and students, which we call our Scholars in Prison project. We conduct public and private advocacy on behalf of individuals who qualify for our support, and we encourage everyone to use the form letters on our website to continue expressing concern for imprisoned academics, and to follow us on social media to help raise awareness about these cases. This work is more important than ever in the time of COVID-19, as most of these prisons where our scholars are held are crowded and do not offer the needed medical care to prisoners. So our scholars in prison are at high risk of contracting COVID-19 and also at high risk of not receiving the needed medical treatment if contracted. Students and faculty can support Scholars at Risk's case advocacy work through participating in our student advocacy seminars, in addition to signing letters on our website. Seminars are faculty-led classes where students conduct research and organize advocacy on behalf of imprisoned scholars. We guide classes remotely by calling in, offering case information and materials, providing advocacy guidance, and arranging for guest lectures by case experts. We also connect students in different states and countries working on similar issues or cases to brainstorm over video, providing an international experience for our students who are now stuck where they are. The seminar students typically gather in Washington, D.C. each year for a training and advocacy event called Student Advocacy Day, which includes meetings with government representatives on the Hill and other stakeholders to share information on cases of concern. We are now moving the event online, making it even more accessible to students participating in the seminars, meaning all students in the seminar can attend Student Advocacy Day. Students will receive training to help them present their cases to members of Congress over phone or on video, ensuring that like even in these virtual times, students still have access to the hands-on experience that the program offers. Similarly, SAR's legal clinics provide students, well, often law students, with an opportunity to help advance our public advocacy efforts to address countries' academic freedom records through mechanisms like the UN's Universal Periodic Review and others. All of this work is done remotely. We also organize regional hubs to coordinate advocacy efforts with SAR's support across regions. Regional hubs add a local or regional voice to this international conversation about academic freedom. Hub members are faculty, students, administrators, and NGO partners interested in region-specific advocacy projects relating to academic freedom. And of course, we are always welcoming new hub members, especially with expertise in the Americas, Africa, Southeast Asia, and Eastern Europe. I will wrap it up there, but very much welcome any questions either now or over email after the session. Thank you all.
Okay, great. So if we don't have any immediate follow-up questions, I'll turn this back to Adam and we can reserve time for questions at the end. If you do have any questions, feel free to write them down in the Q&A. But if not, for the sake of time, let's hand it back to Adam.
All right, thank you, Maddie. And for the sake of time, I'm going to hand it back to Chelsea Blackburn-Cohen and Joyce Pissarello, who will talk about the research and learning aspects as well as the membership aspects.
Great. Thank you, Adam. And thanks everyone for being here today. As many of you know, SAR's research and learning really comprises a breadth of what it is that the network does. So naturally, the scholars who benefit from our protection work also participate in our speaker series, which is one form of the learning that SAR offers. And likewise, within our advocacy, the monitoring work that Claire was mentioning that goes into the Free to Think report really puts some of SAR's research into action as well. We have been working on some newer projects that we've collaborated on with partners, which include the Academic Freedom Index, which you may have seen launched at our Congress. And we are actively developing a project on self-censorship as well. But really, at the core of SAR's research and learning that distinguishes it from protection advocacy is its proactive nature. And so that's this idea that where protection can address the individual harms caused by the lack of academic freedom, and advocacy can kind of raise the alarm and awareness around the issues themselves. SAR's work on promoting core higher education values is really the preventative step in our triage approach, so to speak, that bridges protection and advocacy. So in regard to this area specifically, and as we adjust to our new, hopefully temporary reality, we recently released updated materials, our Promoting Core Higher Education Values discussion guide and workshop supplement. And so these materials are available on our website. In the past, we've put the theory into practice by offering workshops at a variety of academic conferences. But now we're really trying to shift and adapt the workshop model into a hybrid online training that can be tailored to the interests of specific audiences at our network colleges and universities, whether that be faculty, administrators, staff, or students, as well as through our association partners too. The workshops are intended to be collaborative and co-facilitated with the members of our network. These workshops, they really aim to address, a common gap that we've found in our work. While academic freedom is essential to intellectual activities, faculty and really to a greater extent, staff and administrators typically don't, undergo an academic freedom training as a part of a larger onboarding or workplace requirement. And especially as definitions of academic freedom evolve over time and across institutions, and of course, in response to current events. And likewise, when you think about it from a student perspective, students enter college with the expectation that they understand the limits and extensions of their inquiry and expression, inside the classroom, outside of the classroom, but still on campus. And rarely are they actually trained in what this looks like as a university student generally, and the unique role that college plays during a time when, during the time where we're training students as future civic leaders. And so we see this as increasingly important now as we're reading about and even perhaps experiencing not just issues related to academic freedom, but other core values such as access and social responsibility and autonomy and accountability being implicated really at a far greater scale. So we'll begin offering these trainings, which we're really excited about, hopefully in the fall. And so please do let us know if this would be of interest to you and your colleagues, and we can work with you to have that make sense for your campus or your association members. I should also mention, we've continued to offer a free online course, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with at this point. It's called Dangerous Questions: Why Academic Freedom Matters. And it's on the FutureLearn platform that's enrolled over 3,400 learners. And so we've developed this with many of our partners on the Academic Freedom Refuge Project. And in the space that we're all in now, MOOCs are having somewhat of a bit of a renaissance, I guess. So we welcome any ways that you might be interested in incorporating the 3-week course or content from it in your existing classes. And then, of course, you know, you're all probably familiar, it's Adam and Rob kind of touched on earlier with our biennial Global Congress, and that our landing on a March 2020 date resulted in us having to move as much of the Congress as we could online in a really short amount of time. And so, you know, the good news is that we saw hundreds of folks log into Zoom from all around the world, you know, before it became a daily feature of our lives. And, you know, we got out of it unscathed from Zoom bombers and still managed to have a really robust and meaningful dialogue. And, you know, the whole thing really reminded us of the power of having a network and the promise of continued momentum, even in a virtual setting. So naturally, we are hoping to offer the parts of this Congress that we couldn't move quickly online later this year, whatever format that may be. And then lastly, to that effect, like our virtual speaker series, we've also begun to pilot a SAR brown bag seminar for our staff. And so, you know, that typically consists of inviting academics or practitioners to help us synthesize our work on a broader intellectual level. But now we're exploring opportunities to adapt this type of enrichment and development session into a wider conversation for our network members, whether that be virtual brown bags or podcast episodes. So please do stay tuned for that, and do let us know if you have any suggestions. And then I'll just end with saying that I know all of us at SAR are really responsive and grateful and open to opportunities to collaborate with our partners in our network as we continue to adapt. And so thank you all so much for remaining really just so committed to this work.
Great. So I think it's my turn. So I'll just briefly start. My name is Joyce. I'm the Director of Membership and University Relations at SAR. It's a pleasure to see so many of you on the call today. I want to say that I've really seen the USA section grow under Adam and the steering committee's stewardship. And I know that everyone was looking forward to getting together in Baltimore. But I want everyone to realize the momentum is not lost, and having all of you on this call today, I think, is really testimony to how we can move things forward together in this new environment. So one thing I want to say as I start is I'd like to talk a little bit about communication within the network. I know that as things change, and campuses and higher ed in general is undergoing a lot of changes, and we're all grappling to kind of situate ourselves and get our bearings in this new world, what it may look like in the next few months on campus. The network's work is more essential than ever. And really the very concept of a network itself, sharing our ideas, our work, and our experience is going to be crucial as we all navigate these changes together. And so we have, in our work on the membership team, we've been striving to move some of our activities to a virtual realm where they can be more useful for our faculty. But what I really want to emphasize is that we are going to need all of your insights and your expertise over the next several months as we find our way forward. So first I'll say, please, anytime you have a question, whether you want to discuss launching a project on your campus, brainstorm about opportunities for involvement, we are always available. So please reach out to Adam, Chelsea, myself, Maddie, the whole team. We would love to talk. and support you in any way that we can and help our programming match your needs in this new environment. I also want to say, communication has always been very essential to our work, and we've always designed our programming around our members' needs and their requests, surveying them for what they'd like to see more of, what's most helpful on their campuses. But now as things change, and we're well aware that even within the US section, there will be a lot of diversity as far as how different higher education institutes decide to move forward, we're going to work hard to really tailor programming to assist our members in the way that's best for their community and their campus. So I'm going to give a little example of that through our virtual speaker series. So this was one of the first aspects of our programming that we've adapted for a new online remote environment. So many of you may be familiar with our speaker series program. This has been a pillar of SAR's work on the membership side for many years. Through this program, universities in the network can invite a SAR scholar to speak on their campus. It's a wonderful opportunity to increase engagement, hear fascinating stories and expertise in a variety of fields, as so many of our scholars just have such impressive backgrounds, and they're really excited to share that with the campus community. So we've seen these can either take place as larger events on campus or sometimes just classroom visits too. When we realized so many of our members would be going remote, we moved this to a virtual format. So our scholars have committed to participating virtually in classroom events or larger events on campus. And I think it's a really great way in the new environment to bring new voices into virtual learning and remote learning. We're going to share a little bit more about that programming in our follow-up for the meeting, but we're looking at a lot of areas of our work and trying to figure out the best way that we can connect them with our members, some of who will be on campus, some of whom may not be in the fall. Yeah, and I also just want to emphasize on the communication side, as our representatives on campus, you all have always been essential to us in sharing our work with peers. And as you all know, SAR's work really spans a diversity of program areas. So whether it is our legal advocacy, our legal workshops, or our student advocacy clinics, we've always relied on your teams to help us connect with the right people in various departments on your campus and spread the word about SAR's work. I think in the new environment, this will be more essential than ever. And so whether it's forwarding on our materials, making those connections, or just making some introductions so we know what departments we should be reaching out and connecting with to make sure that everyone on your campus has access to services from SAR, please let us know, because we really want to make sure that we're helping all of the faculty and students on your campus move forward this programming in the next year. Yeah, and I'll just say thank you so much, and I think we want to leave time for questions, so I'll wrap up there.
All right, thank you, Joyce and Chelsea. And thanks to actually everybody for the updates and the perspectives. They're interesting, reassuring, thought-provoking, a lot of information. And much of this, of course, is you can find throughout the SAR website, and perhaps some of the various people you've heard from can direct you even more specifically to get the information. I suspect many of you may have some questions. We're going to move off the Q&A function, and if you just if you just raise your hand with the, it should be either at the bottom of your screen or by your name, I can then call on you and you can ask your question verbally, talk to people. It would be helpful if you introduced yourselves as well and where you're from. And also I asked the SAR staff to keep their video on too, so people will know where to direct questions to. And once again, before I forget, I do want to invite anybody on the call to consider joining one of the subcommittees from one of these areas that you have heard from. Please feel free to email me. Again, with information. And I also want to add to what Joyce mentioned about communication is we do have a SAR US listserv as well, which you can either sign up through. Chelsea's just put it in the chat. Or if you're already on it, you can use it as a forum for discussion. So